Good transition, Ben. Good transition.
My kids they just downloaded Call of Duty something or other, and
Black Ops.
Thank you, Wayne. We're live. All right. Good afternoon and welcome to our first business meeting of 2021. Yesterday afternoon and this morning, the council received the annual progress reports from each of Kentucky's public universities and KCTCS. And we wanted to thank every one of the university presidents that joined us both yesterday and today for their input, insight, candor, and ability to answer our questions in a freewheeling manner. It was very informative and have received a lot of positive feedback already on those sessions. Before we do get started today, I want to officially remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube for the general public. Council members must have their audio and video on to participate in the meeting, but please keep your microphone muted otherwise. Heather, will you call the roll, please?
Sure. Dr. Mohammed Barber.
Yes, Heather.
Hello. Mr. Ronald Beal. Mr. Colby Burks.
Here.
Chair Ben Branstetter.
Here.
Mr. Eric Ferris.
I'm here.
Okay. Vice Chair Kimberly Halbauer.
Here.
Hello. Ms. Lori Harper.
Here.
Great. Mr. Lucas Minzer.
Here.
Ms. Donna Moore. Ms. Christy Nelson. Mr. Richard Nelson.
Here.
Ms. Vidya Ravichandran.
Here.
Dr. Robert Statt.
Here.
Mr. Kevin Weaver.
Here.
Ms. Carol Wright.
Here.
And Commissioner Jason Glass. He'll be with us shortly.
I'm on. Thank you.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Hello. Welcome. You have quorum.
All right, thank you, Heather. The minutes from our November 13th council meeting are in the Onboard web portal. Are there any objections to those as presented? If none, they are approved as distributed. We do have one council resolution proposed for adoption this afternoon. President Michael Carter retired from Campbellsville University after an impressive 22 years of service. During this tenure, Dr. Carter oversaw unparalleled growth in student enrollment, in the number of programs offered, and in the number of faculty and staff employed. His leadership led to Campbellsville obtaining the rank of a level 5 institution within its Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges designation, and this allowed Campbellsville to graduate its first class of PhD students this past December. Additionally, since Dr. Carter's joined Campbellsville in 1999, the university's budget has grown by 650%, and the endowment by 400%. And the community of Taylor County has enjoyed an economic impact of over $137 million by the growth that Dr. Carter has led, which is quite impressive. The resolution is in the Onboard for your review. Before we take a vote on that, I want to turn it over to President Thompson to say a few words.
President Carter, so good to see you, my friend. It's been what a pleasure working with you over the last many years. If the council doesn't know, when we look at our private nonprofits, which is very much a part of our strategic agenda, very much a part of what we have to nourish to get where we need to go in the state toward our 20 by 30 goal. I will have to tell you what Campbellsville has done under your leadership is short of miraculous. I look at the growth, I look at the way you've been innovative, the way you thought a little bit ahead of many other folk in the state in thinking about how to build, a small school in a small community to the powerhouse it is. And I just want to tell you, I appreciate also that you invited me to be part of your campus on our listening tour. When I was there and talking with your students, talking with your faculty and staff, yourself and others, the amount of things that we learned and the way you all treated me during that time was once again exceptional. We're going to miss you in the state. We're going to miss the leadership. We're going to miss the innovation. I'm happy for you. Maybe one of these days we'll all get there where you're going. but I just wanted to take a personal moment and just say thank you. And the council is so happy to give you this resolution. But more specifically, we're happy that you are a part of what we have been trying to accomplish in the state. So good to see you, and congratulations.
And I'm very impressed with the Campbellsville billboards in Louisville.
Well, thank you so very much, Dr. Thompson, and each of the council members. It has been a real joy to serve here in the Commonwealth over these last 22 years. And 14 years before that, I was down in Tennessee at Carson Newman College as provost. And so, but it's been a great tenure. We've got 3 new grandbabies. And so I'm moving into a new chapter of life. I will probably still do maybe some consulting or something in higher ed, but I'm not going to do it full time. But thank you so much for remembering me, and thank you for the great collegiality that we've enjoyed here in the state. And it's an exciting time, a challenging time for all of us. And please know of my best wishes to each of you. Please stay safe and stay well. And again, Dr. Thompson, thank you for your outstanding leadership of our Council for Post-Secondary Education, and for each of you that serve. We appreciate it very, very much.
All right, thank you very much. The resolution is in your materials for review. Do I have a motion to approve?
Then I move that we, as a body, pass this resolution honoring Michael Carter and the good work he's done at Campbellsville. Wholeheartedly approve that.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Second by Dr. Stat. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The resolution carries. Thank you very much, Dr. Carter. Appreciate it.
Thank you all again, and Godspeed be with each of you.
Same with you, my friend.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
We're going to move on to Commissioner Glass. I see your video is on, and would you like to give your report as well? We're having a hard time hearing you.
I think you're on mute, sir.
Is there a setting on your earbuds? We're still unable to hear you.
Okay, we'll come back. We'll table that and come back here in a few minutes, Commissioner. Sorry about that. President Thompson, we're going to move on to your report. The written report is in our onboard materials. President Thompson, is there anything in particular that you'd like to add for us this afternoon?
Yes, a few things. I won't take a long time. First of all, I just want to thank my staff. I mean, I know you all get this sense, those of you who work with them a lot, they work their butts off all the time. And this COVID experience has not slowed them down any. As a matter of fact, I would argue if I'm any kind of indicator of what COVID has done for me, is actually make my days go longer and kind of mix what we do at home with what we do in our work. But I've got an excellent staff, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that in front of the council members. You heard a lot about what the campuses are talking about and what they're dealing with and some of the successes we have. I won't go in great detail because you've heard that. I do want to point out, though, that the agenda that you folks approved and some of the things we've done since I came aboard are really having an impact. And I just want to point some of those out. I mean, since I've been here, we went to a test optional policy for the state. We set the minimum admissions. I just want you to remember what you heard during this process, how that has helped us to be nimble. We also actually mandated the co-requisite model and got rid of developmental education as we know it. I mean, think about the numbers you saw and the percentages you saw there. Our tuition, we've had the lowest tuition in our history in the last 2 years, at least in the history of the CPE. if you think about performance funding, the impact that that has had on closing gaps, our diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, all these are items we administer or we approve or we put in place. Project Graduate, where you heard Eli talk about that, that comes from us. I could keep on going forever with this, but you get the hint. What we do is important, and it's very much a part of our strategic process. So this is not done by happen chance. So I would just want you all to understand the importance of us setting this agenda and how we need to be engaged in it. I've been really impressed in the last 2 days to see the engagement from this board. As a matter of fact, very impressed. Starting next week, you'll get your opportunity to start the next planning cycle for the state. As you all know, we set the strategic agenda and our campuses build their plans around it. So starting next week, the ASI committee with our fearless leader, Lori Harper, will be bringing us together to talk about where we need to go. We will have focused sessions. Once again, you can read it in my report. But I also want to thank David and his crew because they've been working hard to collect the data that points to our SWOT analysis. The campus vaccination plans, we worked really heavily with Dr. Stack and the governor's office. We were increased and put in the priority category of 1C. We're hoping that starts in February and having it done somewhere around middle of March. Once again, they're still prioritizing the other areas too, but we are a part of that. Our faculty and staff will be in that group. Their P12 partners are in category 1B, and the governor informed us a couple of days ago, we are really ahead on getting those faculty and staff immunized, and I'm sure that Dr. Glass will be talking about that. Item I'm really proud of and what we're doing, and it's already getting a lot of attention both statewide and nationally, is on the Commonwealth Education Continuum. Chair Branstetter sits on there with us, but Dr. Glass and Lieutenant Governor Coleman and myself, we co-chair that. And this is really going to some of the areas you heard is very problematic that we have to work on. And so I really appreciate the questions that was asked by this council to our presidents about how do we work in ensuring that we can get more people into college and get through college. That was heavy. Performance funding, I'm a little bit proud of this. I'll go ahead and I won't spend nearly as much time as I'd like to spend on it. But by the legislature, we had to come back this year and collect all the members of the performance funding work group that's in law. And we had to evaluate what we've done so far and then make recommendations to the legislature about what the law should look like moving forward. We had all the campus presidents, myself, we had leaders from the House, leaders from the Senate, and the governor's office take part. We got consensus. So we're helping shape that bill now. I think Senator Gibbons on the Senate side is putting it forth. We think it's a very progressive bill. Make a long story short, performance funding has had a huge impact that's positive. And so we want to ensure that many of our campuses get off the fiscal cliff. And in this law, that will ensure that many will have a stabilized budget while going to an almost pure performance funding process. I should have said earlier, I have Amanda Ellis on the line if you want to talk to her about the Commonwealth Education Continuum in more detail. The legislative session, I have something in there for you to read if you want, but I'm happy to report that the executive budget put forth for the higher education a 2% increase. 1% goes to performance funding, 1% goes to a base increase of our campuses. And we'll see what the Senate and the House do with that. But you remember last year, they had put an increase in for us too. And the Senate and House increased that amount that the governor proposed. However, COVID happens. I'm happy to say they kept our budget flat this year. And so we're going into this with hopes that we will have at least that 2% and maybe hopefully a little bit more than that. We also have about a $50 million resurgence fund. In other words, it's $50 million that is going into the legislative agenda. Hopefully they will approve it for the budget that will work on our deferred maintenance on our campuses. It is a matching fund that our campuses have to match to get some of those dollars. We have Greg Rush on the line if you want to know more about it, but you'll see a set of bills in here that we included that I would ask you to read. A lot of speaking engagements from the standpoint of talking about why higher education matters in Kentucky. And as you all know, I'm very clear in connecting what we do in higher education with building a solid workforce and building a solid economy. And you know the data about the 90% of the people that are on unemployment during the COVID time were people with no higher education credential that mattered. I also argue that college is not just a 4-year experience. What we do with our technical programs, that's college. So we need to really get that message out. The governor also put in his budget what is called a Better Kentucky Promise. It's the last dollar scholarship in for all the students who wants to get a 2-year degree, whether a community college or a 4-year institution. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with that once again in the House and the Senate, but the governor also put that in there. He also put some money in to kind of help the campuses out who have KRS, that pension plan, because this year that employer input will increase from 49 cents to the dollar to even higher. So we're happy to see that in the budget. Once again, a lot more to cover. If you're interested in knowing more, I'm happy to talk forever, but I'm sure my chair would not want me to do that. But there's a lot of stuff going on. We haven't slowed down. We're working diligently with our campuses to recognize what we need to do and not wait for it to happen to us, but us to happen to it. And so this is not something we're trying to react to. This is something we're trying to proact with. And you heard a lot of that in the presentations today. So I want to thank our campuses where the rubber meets the road for really responding to the CPE agenda and doing the things way beyond what we were asking them to do for sure, but in fact, doing what we've asked them to do. So Chair Brandstetter, I'll take any questions that the council may have of me.
Thanks,
Aaron?
Dr. Stout.
Is the 2% stop loss in the bill?
2% stop loss right now is not in the bill. We have what happens in the bill. Well, we haven't seen the bill fully yet. We'll have to see what happens. But what took place was they took our current base and they put that in law. They're going to put that in law. So now any new money that's coming into the system will be distributed based on outcomes or based on performance.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for President Thompson at this point in time? If not, Commissioner Glass, let's go back to your session.
Thank you. I apologize. Can you hear me now?
We're all square. Thanks.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm sorry about that technical problem. Thanks for accommodating me. Also, thanks to President Thompson. I appreciate the opportunity to be part of the Commonwealth Education Continuum, and that was a group that came about and largely from Aaron's leadership. And I'm excited about the direction that's taking and what we're going to be able to do. Just appreciate being part of that group, getting to co-lead it with the Lieutenant Governor and President Thompson. And we've got a powerhouse team on it, had a great first meeting. And I think we're going to be able to achieve some impactful outcomes as a result of the work of that group. I'll just be brief and an update from the K-12 landscape. Of course, all things all the time seem to be COVID related right now. We've had some positive changes with vaccination progress for K-12 educators. Those largely started across the state earlier in January. We expect to have the first round in arms of those educators who wish to have the vaccine by February the 5th. Then the second dose sometime after that, depending on when their first shot came in. So that's great progress. Kentucky's done a great job moving this forward. I know that higher education personnel are right in the next group, so we want to get to them as quickly as we can. Hats off to the Department of Public Health, the Governor's Office, local public health folks across the state who have worked to prioritize educators through this process. We're grateful. We have many districts in the state that are already back in-person learning in some form, using a variety of different virus mitigation techniques and strategies to allow that to happen. Of course, they do get disrupted by quarantining and outbreaks that happen in communities. And we have two largest districts in the state, Jefferson County and Fayette County, that still have not returned to in-person learning. So we're hopeful that with these changes that the vaccine brings and protecting staff, we'll be able to offer in-person learning for all kids in Kentucky and eventually work toward the return of some kind of normalcy. Toward that end, Kentucky will be receiving a large infusion of federal dollars to support learning loss mitigation and the return to in-person learning through the federal CRISA Act. It builds on the federal CARES Act from 2020, but this is a much larger infusion of dollars. Kentucky's share of this is going to be $928 million, so it's a substantial investment. Most of that will be distributed to school districts using something called the Title I allocation. So that's considering how many free reduced lunch students are at the district. And so some of your districts that are serving more diverse and at-risk populations will receive larger funding opportunities through that. We do have a portion of that the department gets to hold back for state level efforts, but we also expect to turn most of that department level holdback to districts as well. We're really encouraging and supporting our school districts and schools to think about how they can bring in direct services to students. And so by that, I mean things that are learning oriented. They could be anything that really directly impacts and supports student learning. So we're looking at extended day, extended year, summer programs, early return to school, community programs, and this could be a huge opportunity for partnering with higher education across the state to think about how we can create experiences for our K-12 students over the next couple of years with these funds. So that's exciting. We have a lot of work underway or ahead in how that happens, but we're going to be able to do some great things for Kentucky's kids and make up for some of the experiences that they missed out on over this past year. As with President Thompson, we're also keenly watching the legislative process unfold and seeing where things end up on that. First priority is of course the budget, which is never where everyone wants it to be, but we're grateful to not be in the catastrophic budget world that many thought we would have been in 6 months ago. So that's a relief, but we know that there's still much more to be done to make sure that education funding is stabilized in the state. I'll stop there. Mr. Chair, thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about what's happening in the K-12 world, and I'll turn things back over to you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Are there any questions or comments that we can while we've got the commissioner? I don't know if you're able to stay with us for the whole meeting or not, but
I can. I'll be around.
All right.
We've got Luke with his hand up, Eric, and I think Kim as well.
Okay.
Yep. Commissioner, thank you for your time. I just a number of people in my area have just asked, what are the test scores looking like compared to previous years? Are we seeing a dip? Are we, I'm also thinking from a, college going rate, are we seeing any headwinds or anything that are concerning to you?
We're likely to have significant learning disruptions as a result of the experience over this past year. Some students have done really well and taken to the online and sort of hybrid versions of in-person online schooling that were necessary this past year. But a lot of our kids have really struggled with it, particularly our kids that are from historically underserved backgrounds or demographics. So we don't have test data right now, and it's possible that we won't. We are preparing to administer a statewide assessment in Kentucky. However, we won't be able to ensure test reliability and validity because our kids are in all sorts of learning environments. So we have prepared an assessment to give. It's shorter than in previous years. It can be more flexibly applied. That should give our district some information around where students are. That information almost certainly will not be connected to any sort of accountability, so we won't be rating and putting any scores or stars on schools or anything like that with this information. It's just too disrupted and unevenly. The testing environment is too uneven for us to use it for that purpose, but it should provide us some diagnostic information. The best data that we have right now about the impacts of COVID on our students come from local district formative measures that districts are giving right now. They tend to indicate that there is a disruption or loss in learning that students are experiencing that is worse for students that come from historically underserved backgrounds or demographics, not particularly unexpected result. But I think going forward, we won't really know the full impact of this until sometime later. That's one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're able to restore and return to more in-person learning and some sense of normalcy, is assess where students are and then what efforts need to be taken to make up for those experiences and catch students up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Colby. Colby.
Sorry, my audio was going in and out. Quick question for you. I can only imagine that this virtual and distance learning in the COVID era is also having a very negative effect on those students with learning disabilities. I just want to know what kind of steps are being taken to honor those individual learning plans for those individuals in a distance learning environment.
So any kid that has a disability has an IEP or an individualized education plan. And so that lists services that student is to receive to support them with whatever disability that they have. Those IEP documents and all the services that are required under those were not waived during this pandemic. So districts have gone about serving those students in a variety of ways. In some cases, services have been delivered remotely or virtually. In some cases, we've had schools that have been able to bring in students either in small groups or in larger groups with virus mitigation strategies to continue supporting the students and delivering the elements that are on the IEP. But honestly, we have some students, just because of the disruption of the virus and with staffing, we haven't been able to keep up with the requirements that are in their IEP. That's going to trigger something that we call compensatory services. So if you don't do what the IEP indicates as far as speech language pathology hours or additional supports, physical occupational therapy, any of those sorts of things. If the district doesn't do those, then the student is still owed those services. So I think for the next couple of years, we're going to be working our way out of catching students up for those experiences. It's one of the disruptions that we've had in the K-12 world because of COVID.
Eric.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioner Glass. With the education continuum process or otherwise on the short term, what do you see as some ideas that could help increase the number of K through 12 kids getting enrolled into secondary education on the short term? Because we're the last day or so talked about this, enrollment issue with all the schools and continue to see the decline even before COVID. If there were some things you could recommend on the short term, what might they be?
I think that's really the main focus and work of the Commonwealth Education Continuum that President Thompson took the lead on starting up, that Lieutenant Governor and I are working in partnership to support. I think that all of us have ideas around things that we could do in the short term. One of those is making sure that students are filling out the FAFSA as a way to make sure financial aid that may help support students in going to college. But also, I think, and I keep raising up that there are different ways to go about financing college as well, or other higher education experiences that include work and also considering more economical regional options that are available to students. So that, I think that's something that we've got to work on right away, is making sure that students know that these resources are still available and they're considering the full range of financing options or cash payment options that may be available to our students. I think in the longer run with the Commonwealth Education Continuum, and Aaron made this point very clear, that longer run is not very long in his view. He wants to get something done, which I really appreciate that sense of urgency. But I think that one of the things that we should be doing is talking to the students who are at this point of transition in life and understanding from them what are the barriers that are keeping them or creating challenges for them enrolling and taking that next step into some kind of higher education experience. I think if we start by talking to the people who are most directly impacted and understanding what challenges they really face, that helps us then with whatever policy or state solution that we come forward with, to make sure it's really targeted and aimed at the right problem. So I think that will be one of the first things that we do, is empathy and understanding for our students who are at that transition point. What really are the challenges that have gotten in your way as we've gone through this COVID disruption?
And let me add on a little bit to that, because the commissioner hit one of the main ideas on the head. And we put students on this continuum so we can hear directly from their voices, but we have to get to these students somehow. And not only do what the commissioner just said we need to do, we need to talk to them about their options. We need to figure out exactly how they see themselves. On the listening tour, you may remember so many of those students who were high performing academically didn't even see themselves going to college or belonging in college. So this goes way beyond the academic process that we sometimes spend time on. This goes to the social, cultural, emotional, and all other kinds of pieces that we really need to be paying attention to. So I appreciate the commissioner being really on board with trying to work together to get to these students and talking with them and hearing what they have to say. And this needs to be a part of our learning paradigm in post-secondary too. We need to figure out where they're at, what their issues are, instead of somehow imposing everything on them, that we have a partnership, if you will, toward this outcome that we're talking about.
Who should be having that conversation with the students? And I don't know if Amanda wants to chip in on this too, but I'm just curious, does that come from our end or from the counselors, or as a practical matter?
So I think it depends on how we organize it, but I definitely see in our future, I'm so pleased. This is why I'm so thankful for these co-leads and their wisdom, is I really see intentionality around focus groups and ways to reach students across the state. And it could be through our partnership. We have counselors and admission folks on our continuum. We have principals and teachers represented. And so that's where we'll have to figure out the best way to reach, but we have to be intentional in asking the right questions to yield answers on what's really going on. And that's something that we have to be very strategic about for long-term to dig in. And a lot of it, what surfaced even from our breakout groups, is just the information of getting it out there for folks to even see that they are capable and they can pursue further education and that they can afford it, both to the points of Dr. Glass and Dr. Thompson. And so that is one thing we're talking about even internally is even common language. And even our university folks having the same language or similar language as our high school counselors and college career counselors. There's confusing vocabulary. There are lots of things that we need to align. But we definitely find it to be a high priority to capture the voices. And those would be intentional focus group areas that we can definitely dig into, partner with folks within the regions and capture feedback. And that's not atypical from at least what I did, and I'm sure that CP did, but when I was at the department, we would team up with local leadership and get the voices of students, and it's powerful. And so that's kind of what we had in mind on some of the actionable items based on the feedback that we received, which we are still processing, just because the meeting took place 2 days ago, but we had 5 groups and very high engagement. So I'm encouraged, and to see the alignment and the same concerns from the universities as they shared their overview, to me, helps to pinpoint some key areas that need to be addressed and additional information that we need.
Thank you. Colby, is that a new hand or is that your old hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject right here since we're talking about students, so I think I should. So over the past month, I've been trying to make myself available to concerns and talk with these different student groups. One of the biggest things I did was I met with a bunch of the groups from the underrepresented minorities, the URMs, such as at the law school, and then I've even reached out to some other groups in undergrad and high schools and all that. And one of the common trends they're telling me is economics, whether they can afford college is a big factor, but I'm getting a lot of feedback on they don't think that they're expected to go to college, if that makes sense. They think society basically has made these individuals think that they don't go to college. That's just not what they do. They get a job right out of high school. And I think that's a big factor that is causing a lot of people not to go to school. I mean, not to diverge too much, but one of my favorite books or writers is W.E.B. Du Bois. And he talks a lot about Booker T. Washington's talented 10th in the Reconstruction period, on how he said that only 10% of the African-American community actually has the skills necessary to pursue an education. And I gravely think that we are not yet out of that. I think a lot of the people in these communities, these minority groups, still believe that 10%, that only 10% of those individuals have what it takes to get to college. And one of the biggest things they told me to counteract that is, and I'm sure this is not the same for everybody, but my mom always says that I look really handsome, and I don't really believe her because it's my mom. It feels like she has to say that. So I don't really believe her that much. And so it seems like that's the same phenomenon. When these students are hearing from counselors and higher education officials, they're thinking, oh, they want me to pursue an education. They're just saying that. I think the biggest thing these people are telling me is they wish that students that look like them and learn like them are the ones that are telling them about these avenues for higher education. I'm sorry for this cat working, but they say the biggest thing is that they want, like I said, they want people that look like them and are from their regions and are interested in the same things. And they said that would mean more than any higher education official telling them the exact same information. It's all going to be all about who grants that information rather than what the information's content actually is. Sorry, that was a lot.
Thanks, Cole.
You're spot on, exactly, which is one of the areas we talked about at the end, even with having diversity in our teacher workforce and with our counselors. That is a huge need for all students, first of all. But to your point, Colby, you're 100% right. There has to be connection, and you have to see yourself in that role and see others who are similar, whether it's cultural or ethnicity or race or even gender, whatever it may be. You have to be able to see yourself, and that absolutely is a big piece of what's discussed as well a couple days ago. I'm sorry, Dr. Thompson, I think you were going to say something.
The thing I was going to say, and I know we probably need to bring this to the end, are 2 quick points. One is we understand policy has a lot to do with this. We have to align I'm taking Ben's thunder away, but I won't do too much. But the idea of incentivizing going along with the educational policy priorities are essential. And if Ben wants to talk about that more, talks to me about it all the time, so he may want to jump in. But the idea that when we're connecting those, I think that's essential. So on the Commonwealth Continuum, we have the chair of the CPE committee sitting on it, as well as the chair of the Kentucky Board of Education, as well as the head of KIA. We believe that all of these things coming together in the conversation and not just cutting down barriers, but offering up what Colby was talking about. We've got more student groups now engaged I'm sure at CPE, my staff feels like they're listening too much to students because we've got them everywhere now. But the idea that it becomes something that we need to take on ourselves to identify reasonable policies that move this stuff. And we do have to have urgency. I argue that we've allowed some of these things to happen for the last many years, and we've seen our college going rate go down steadily. We see our success going up in post-secondary, but so I appreciate Colby's statement. I couldn't let it go without saying that is a strong set of items that we need to be looking at. I'll shut up now.
And we had the first meeting of the Commonwealth Education Continuum was on Wednesday, and that 2-hour session vastly exceeded my expectations. I think it was very well organized. We have a lot of good people getting together to solve some of these issues. So I've got some high expectations on that going forward. And Commissioner Glass, I look forward to working with you and your board chair with that continuum over the course of the next year. All right, we will get back on our agenda, and Lori Harper is the chair of the Academic and Strategic Initiatives Committee. Lori, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Chair Branston. The Academic and Strategic Initiatives Committee, we met on January 12th, and all that material is in your, or the report is in your materials. We had no real action items to approve, thus we're not going to ask for approval today. However, we did have many subject areas that may be of interest to the council. So as you saw in President's report, the development of the statewide strategic agenda will kick off on this coming Monday, February 1st. While this will be a special called ASI committee meeting, I'd like to encourage any council member to attend as we begin discussing the timeline, the questions guiding the planning process, and the individuals and groups that will be engaged during the development. The meeting will be led by CPE staff with facilitation assistance by Stephanie Ashley of the EKU Facilitation Center, and it should be quite productive. If you're not on the ASI committee and want to attend, let Heather know so she can send you a Zoom connection. Again, the door is always welcome to anybody who wants to attend. Also, at the January 12th meeting, we got a closer look at the Cultural Competency Certification Program that is developed by CPE staff and will soon be available as a pilot program to our campuses and other organizations. The program is based on the A4 model of cultural competencies, which is awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, and action. And staff are finishing up the details on how those who go through the course will earn micro credentials and potential course credits. I'll also note that all CPE staff members have gone through a version of the training, and it may be very valuable for council members to experience a version at a future retreat as well. Finally, we did receive an update from the research and data team, and they've had many research projects that will be released in the coming months. In addition to the annual progress report releasing in February, be on the lookout for a teacher preparation sector analysis they completed in partnership with EMSI and the second iteration of the highly valuable return on the investment report. I can't say it like President Thompson did, but the staff is doing excellent work and they're really putting in a little time and effort in. So again, thank you to the staff. And if you have an opportunity to visit and see, I know you'll appreciate what you'll be seeing over the next month or so. So unless there are any other questions, I'll turn it back over to Chair Brandstiller.
And you're muted.
You're on mute, sir.
Should have done that. Thank you, Ms. Harper. Are there any questions for ASI before we move forward? I would encourage everybody that can join to join the kickoff meeting for the strategic agenda. Obviously, that's going to set the stage for for the near-term future for us. All right. Now on to Dr. Statt to give the report for Committee on Equal Opportunities. Dr. Statt.
Thank you. The Committee on Equal Opportunities met this past Monday, January 25th. And like the ASI committee, we also received a closer look at the Cultural Competency Certification Program and the framework for micro-credentials. At this time, if she's available, I would like to call on Dr. Offit to briefly amplify or clarify the certification process. Don, are you on?
I am.
Go ahead and give us a brief sketch of exactly what we're talking about.
Good afternoon, board members and chair. We heard a little bit about it in the last report with the ASI committee, but as you may know, the Kentucky Public Post-Secondary Education Policy for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion states that in order to live and thrive on a diverse campus and in an increasingly diverse world, students, faculty, and staff must become culturally competent. And so cultural competency provides individuals with the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to increase their effectiveness in relating across cultural differences, and not only prepares them for life in an increasingly diverse and domestic environment, diverse domestic and international environments, but also in their work environments as we're preparing our students to be productive and successful in their work environments. And as part of the policy, it requires that institutions create diversity, equity, and inclusion plans. And some of the strategies that we're asking them to expound upon are their strategies designed to increase cultural competence, not only among students, but among faculty, staff as well. And we give them an opportunity at the institutional level to create a cultural competency certification program as one of the strategies that can meet this goal. And we began talking, and we meet with our institutional diversity reps, and we talked to them and recognized that individuals, institutions were doing this work. And we wanted to come up with a way that we could both honor the work that was being done at the individual institutional level, but also ensure that we are basically talking the same language. So when we talk about cultural competency, regardless of whether a faculty, staff, or student comes from Murray or from Ashland Community and Technical College, that when we say in the state of Kentucky, cultural competence, we have defined that, we've defined what minimum standards look like and what modules and topics are coming from that. So we developed a work group based, comprised of representatives from each of our four-year institutions, as well as a cadre from our KCTCS system that included both faculty and staff. And we started to develop and define what these modules are. And so once we defined those minimum competencies, topics, as well as modules, we coupled that with the 8 to the 4th model for cultural competence as a framework, so that when we look at developing this certification framework and certifying individuals, we would have that framework for foundation. And so what we have done in terms of the outputs for this particular work group is we're working through designing this process that honors, again, the work that's being done at the individual institutional levels, so that CPE will have a certification proposal process so that institutions can have the flexibility to have their own particular program. And within our proposal process, that we will have outlined what needs to be submitted to be certified, so that ultimately CPE ends up certifying the program at the institution, and then the institution would end up certifying students. And with that in mind, I told you about the 8 to the 4th model for cultural competence. We're looking at having the first 2 modules, which are awareness and acknowledgement, be a 6-hour module that has to be accessible for all students at both the KCTCS and the four-year institutions level. And then a subsequent module that includes the third and fourth component, which are acknowledgement and action, and awareness, acknowledgement, I'm sorry, acceptance and action, so that there will be an additional 6-hour component that can be credentialed. And so we're working on the proposal rubric for assessment and the process by which micro-credentials can be administered and given to display for students. Again, we also are working with modules for faculty and staff. You heard in the ASI committee report that we have had cultural competence, professional development for, and we are looking to take those modules and flesh them out just a little bit more and provide those for opportunities for faculty. Work with us. We can either have a train the trainer type of model, or they can work with CPE to be able to administer those modules, or even, as you all have heard us speak before about our higher equity symposium that happens every November, perhaps put that in a track in November so that individuals could sign up and then they could have a day-long track where at the end of that they would receive their certification. So we're really excited about the work that has gone into that, and we are looking to the draft of that to be able to pilot that within the next few months. So I hope I didn't go over too long. It's just hard to wrap that up in a few minutes.
Well, thank you, Dawn. I think you understand why I called on her. She's very passionate about this, very well versed in it. But my thinking is it gives a common ground, shall we say, for what cultural competency is. And we all think we have an idea what cultural competency is, but I think each of us have a different idea. And the analogy I bring is that we all think we do critical thinking teaching, or in the teaching profession, we all do critical thinking, but there's so many variants and so few of us really do it well. So I think this will bring it all together in a very nice fashion. Thank you, Dawn. In the meeting, we also looked at the diversity plan reporting schedule, reviewed the schedule, and have it in mind for the schools and how to, we also got some re-information on the scoring process and how it might be streamlined. At this time, does anybody have any questions regarding the work of the CEO? Thank you. But before I close, you'll see in the report in the onboard that the CEO has had 5 members with terms that expired on December 31st. 2 members have asked to be reappointed and 3 have declined to continue. Chair Brandstetter, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to request the following appointments be made effective January 1, 2021 through December 31, 2023. The reappointments of David Carpenter and Robert Croft, the new appointment of Rochelle Brown, who is a medical director for United Healthcare Clinicals, and the new appointment of Terrence Sullivan, who is the executive director at the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. We still have 1 vacancy and are searching out applicants at this time. Chair Brandstetter, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Stat. The CEO committee is gaining a great set of engaged members. As requested and for the record, at this time, I would like to reappoint David Carpenter and Robert Croft and announce the new appointments of Rochelle Brown and Terrence Sullivan to the Committee on Equal Opportunities effective January 1, 2021, and with terms ended on December 31, 2023. That committee has done some phenomenal work over the last few years, and thank you for everybody that has been involved in that. Moving on to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee.
Chair Brandstetter, can
Yes,
I jump in to say something really fast on that committee? First of all, I think Dawn and her crew is doing a great job, but Dr. Stat runs a great committee. I just want this board to know that what we're doing around this cultural competence certificate getting national attention. And it really goes to measure whether or not we are doing what we purport to be doing. That's what competence is. But the other thing I will say, we've gotten such good response that the Justice Department of Kentucky has asked us to really work with them to use that model as they do the training of their police agencies. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a train the trainer for them next week, one of these weeks, with the state police and so on. So just to let you know, what we're doing here just isn't an educational process for our education. We've gotten a lot of other interest from other folk who believe we are building a capacity for the state. And I don't know if Dr. Glass is on here, but I know some of his folks are talking with us also. So I guess I just want you all to realize how cutting edge this is. This is not business as usual. This is something much larger than that. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Thank you very much. That is important that everybody understands that. Moving on to the Finance Committee. Finance Committee met on December 15th, and that report and accompanying recommendations are in your board materials. Several items covered in that meeting have already been discussed in the last couple of days, so I'll stick to reporting on the items that are new. First, you may recall that at our last meeting, the council delegated final review and authority of a Murray State University interim capital project proposal, in which they requested authorization to spend $2 million in agency funds to make significant upgrades and repairs to Levitt Auditorium HVAC system. The committee reviewed their request, found it met all the requirements, and approved it on the council's behalf. Committee also reviewed and approved the proposed changes to the tuition and mandatory fee policy, which can be found on pages 29 and 31 of your board materials. All changes pertain to the asset preservation fee portion, and they remove the requirement that the project or group of projects exceeds $1 million. Clarify that the fee revenue may be accumulated over time until it meets a specific project scope, and specify that the fee revenue may be used to pay debt service on instruments used to finance projects other than agency bonds. Finally, it also provides guidance regarding the use of fee revenue on ongoing asset preservation, renovation, and fit-for-use projects not included in the initial approval of an institution's asset preservation fee. As you can see in the included timeline, the Finance Committee should conclude its work in this area and propose tuition and mandatory fee ceilings for the 2021-2022 academic year at our next council meeting in April. With that, do I have a motion to approve the proposed revisions to the tuition and mandatory fee policy?
This is Carol. I'll do the motion.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Wright, second by Mr. Nelson. Is there any discussion with regard to this item? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to the Executive Committee report. The Executive Committee met in December with the sole focus on President Thompson's annual evaluation. You may remember we opted to have a less extensive review as compared to years past and use a simple internal review process among the committee. I'll just report out that that discussion and the meeting received positive and constructive feedback with Aaron, and we're going to have a continued focus on the strategic agenda and pathway towards those goals in the future. So overall, it was a positive review. The committee also met in early January, where we covered a number of things that may be of interest to the council. First, we received the fiscal year 1920 audit results from Blue & Company, and I'm pleased to report that yet again, the auditors issued a clean financial report, and there were no deficiencies in internal controls that they considered to be material weaknesses. A copy of the audit can be found in the resources section of Onboard. Please join me in thanking our Finance and Administration Unit for their continued good work in this area. We also discussed the ongoing development of the Student Information Portal website, which was designed in response to board member requests for state-level tools to facilitate pathways between K through 12 and post-secondary education. Once the funding is finalized, either through a general fund appropriation or other internal funding source, the work will be coordinated with the work of the Commonwealth Education Continuum, and it will support high school counselors, college admissions officers, and academic advisors as they assist students in navigating from one level of education to another. Other topics that we discussed included details of the federal stimulus bill that was signed into law in December, and we also had an open discussion on potential ways the state can focus on recruiting and retaining students from out of state without diverting resources from residential students. Finally, the committee also reviewed and approved proposed amendments on 2 regulations, and you can find the details for those beginning on page 34 of your board materials. And it's also up on the screen here. 13 KR 120 is the regulation for private college licensure. The proposed amendment would increase initial licensure fees for new in-state colleges from $1,000 to $10,000 and new out-of-state colleges from $5,000 to $15,000. The amendment also increases annual licensure fees by 50% and of the current rates starting in 2022, 75% in 2023, and 100% or double the current rate beginning in 2024. Many other technical changes related to certificate and diploma program reporting have also been proposed in the application form that are attached to the regulation. 13 KR 410 is the regulation for State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement, otherwise known for its acronym SARA. Kentucky became a member of SARA in fall of 2016, and for those of you who are new to the council since that time, SARA provides a uniform approach and process to approve eligible institutions and allow them to offer distance education to residents of other member states without being individually licensed in that particular state. The proposed amendment would increase fees for SARA participation by half the current rate for each total full-time equivalent student range tier. The necessity to these proposed revisions are due to many reasons, including a greater federal focus on state authorization as a requirement for access to federal Title IV student financial aid, increased consumer protection, and quality assurance standards, and the additional staff to conduct the necessary work. Staff stated that the proposed increase will still not cover the entire cost of operations. However, the increases will assist in providing annual support for CPE's 3 full-time positions dedicated to private college licensure. If approved by the council, CPE staff will file the proposed amendments with LRC and begin the administration review process. Travis Powell, who oversees this work in the process, is on the line today. And does anybody have any questions in regard to these proposed revisions or the regulation amendment process? That was a mouthful. Seeing no questions, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All right, I need a little help, Heather.
I heard Lori. Was that correct? Okay. And then I heard Mr. Ferris.
We'll go with that. A motion by Ms. Harper, a second by Mr. Ferris. Is there any further discussion on those items? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. All right, the motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for all the work associated with those items. Next item is the Nominating Committee. For the final report of the day, I'll ask Carol Wright to present on behalf of Christy Nelson, who is the chair of the Nominating Committee. Carol?
Yes, thank you, Chair Brandstetter. And I just remind all the CPE members and everyone that's attending today, please remember Christy and her family as they go through a difficult time during her loss. So I'll just go ahead and report that the Nominating Committee met on December the 7th and December the 16th to discuss and recommend members to serve as chair and vice chair of the CPE for the 2021 calendar year. After seeking out nominations and expressions of interest, the committee has unanimously agreed to nominate Ben Brandstetter for re-election as chair and Kim Hallbauer for re-election as vice chair. We were in agreement that their performance as chair and vice chair throughout this very tumultuous 2020 has earned them the opportunity to continue into the roles for 2021. So Chair Brandstetter, unless there are any questions, I'll turn it back to you for discussion and vote.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wright. Ms. Wright has presented the nominating committee's proposed slate of officers for 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Nelson. Vidya, did you have the second? Okay. All right, thank you. Is there any discussion at this point in time? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, thank you. Motion carries. Thank you to the nominating committee for doing that. And I'll kind of speak for Kim. I know we're excited to continue to be able to serve in these roles for the next year.
Yes, thank you. This will be lots of fun.
Is that how you describe it, Kim? Okay.
Fun, yes.
Fun. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
That's how I would.
Thank you. All right. No, it is working with good people. It does make it fun. So several of the campuses have provided written reports in your materials. So please review those if you have not done so already. So going to move on to other business that we have with the group. First off, Heather is compiling meeting dates for 2021-2022 academic year, and she expects to send those out for review in the coming weeks. So look for that in your email. Also remember that your annual statement of financial disclosure is due by April 15th to the Ethics Commission, and you should receive an email or letter in the mail with those instructions. And you can contact Heather or Travis Powell if you have any questions regarding that form. We got a couple other items in other business. I think Luke, you had an item you wanted to bring up.
I had a couple items that I wanted to put before the council. First, I kind of touched on this yesterday. I'm looking through these the placemats, and just since the time that I've been on the council, I've just seen a tremendous transformation and a lot of positive information, a lot of progress. The universities are thinking differently. They're talking differently. The council's thinking differently. We're talking differently, and you can see the progress. So I see a lot of positivity. And I think it's time that we start, celebrating that, advertising that, letting people know that there is a lot of good things. There's a lot of areas we need to improve in. I don't want to sit here and say everything's perfect yet, but I'd like to come up with some way. I'd like to put it for the council that we maybe charge the staff with coming up with some way of a public message celebrating 3, 4, 5 key things. I mean, we're seeing graduation percentages go up. We're seeing underrepresented minorities, increasing to graduate. And there's just a lot of good things that we could put out there. And I'm a big believer in celebrating the good, and that success begets success, right? And I think if we can start chipping away at this notion that when college is too affordable, I can't do it. We're hearing that, showing people that, look, there are people doing it. Right, we're succeeding. We're winning. KCTCS getting this national praise. So I don't know exactly the vehicle. I don't have a specific way of tackling it, but CPE staff is probably better at this than I am. But I just think I think we should take some time to celebrate some of the victories that this joint, this public-private council and staff and all of the universities. That we've made a lot of progress, and I think we should celebrate that. So.
Thanks, Luke. I think I see a lot of nodding heads. So I think that we'll take that as, unless somebody disagrees, take that as consensus to move that thing forward. And hopefully, I think probably it's gonna be best to be able to do that formally when we're in person, when that happens. But I think we can get very creative with how to make that work here in the next few months.
Excellent. And I welcome suggestions. Aaron, the staff always has great ideas and suggestions. You have great ideas. I open it up for anybody to chip in. So I don't have a specific way, but I think it's high time to celebrate.
Well, I would agree. There are, yes, that doesn't mean we get less strategic or rely on our laurels. But it is very important that people know that the things we're putting in place are working. We have data to show that. We have up-to-date data. So the idea that we don't, I love your statement, success begets success. I can show that to you and prove that to you without a doubt. So I appreciate, Luke, that you bring this in this manner. I think it is something that the council, I mean, you all are leading this charge. And I think it is important for all of us to understand that we can celebrate at the same time, be strategic and have urgency. So I appreciate this.
Yeah, no problem. The second item is, so that's a good thing. The second item I think we could put voice to. Again, in the placemats, we saw most of the comprehensives are down on enrollment. UK, U of L are pretty flat. We're seeing a lot of headwinds there. The COVID pandemic is obviously hitting that. We're seeing fewer and fewer students filling out the FAFSA. I heard that during it. And so I'd like to put together a motion that, we call this out as a priority, that we do something. I'm not, as you all, for those of you who know me in the council, I'm not one for sitting by idly without at least voicing my opinion. But I think we as a council have a loud voice. And I think, we need to, we need to do something. We need to try something. And I'd like to, just voice that this is a priority to us. We want to work on it. We want to work together on it. But that just by saying, that, yeah, it's important that we do something to stem this trend is important. We're, as Dr. Tom said, we're leading the charge. Well, let's lead here. So, yeah.
And I think, Luke, you put together a formal resolution.
Yeah, so I put together a formal resolution that this is a little more official, putting before the council. Heather, I think you have the verbiage on there, and so it's a lot of words, but I don't know if I read it or Ben, if you want to go ahead and take a crack at it.
I'll go ahead and read this out loud so we're all on the same page. It states, whereas overall undergraduate enrollment at Kentucky's public universities has steadily declined since 2015, and whereas enrollment at KCTCS declined over 10% from the fall of 2019 to fall of 2020, and whereas there's evidence that these enrollment declines are exacerbated by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas there has been a 20% drop-off in Kentucky FAFSA applications compared with this time in 2019, and whereas the Council on Post-Secondary Education very concerned about the effect further enrollment declines will have on the ability to meet 2030 strategic agenda goals and improve educational and economic opportunity for Kentucky citizens. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Council on Post-Secondary Education recognizes the urgency and the need to reverse the trend stated above. The Council therefore deems this a priority that President Thompson work closely with campus leaders and K-12 partners to implement bold actions and strategies to mitigate the near-term enrollment impacts of COVID-19. Further, the council calls on President Thompson to provide a report on this work at the next regularly scheduled CPE meeting.
Ben, do you want
Yes.
anything? Do you want anything in there about the drop-off in high school graduates as being part of this issue? How do we can't do much about the drop in high school graduates, but we need to encourage more high school students. I don't know if that's appropriate in there or not.
Luke, do you want to take this one, or I don't mind answering that one also.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I don't mind for us to add something in there. I think that's where I was leaning with when I said, campus leaders and K through 12 partners. But Ben, do you have a thought on that too? I welcome debate on it.
Yeah, I think Dr. Stett, I think if I think I'd be open to adding something on there with respect to this. I think in my mind, it's somewhat implicit in the first sentence, talking about the overall long-term decline. But and I think that's somewhat the item that you're talking about is somewhat of a demographic type issue, if I'm not mistaken. But I think we'd be open to that as well.
It would just be a whereas the drop in high school graduates has been occurring. Yeah, so this is just a whereas, and that strengthens the campus leaders and K-12 partners to implement action. That's all
Dr.
I'm thinking.
Stat, you're talking about whereas the decline in college going from high school graduates, right?
Well, not only that, the number of high school graduates is dropping. That's, so even if we keep
Oh,
the
okay.
same, if we keep the same percentage, we're still going down.
Yeah, the
Oh,
pie
I
is getting
see.
smaller.
I see.
So it's more a drop in the
Oh.
number of students graduating from Kentucky high schools.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Where is there a drop in the number? Exactly.
Okay, I see. And it looks like that's being edited live right now, Dr. Stat.
Beauty
That's
of
impressive.
Zoom. Yeah.
I was trying to write something down, and it's already happening. Dr. Stat, do you mind if we move on to Eric? He's got his hand up, or we can.
I'm just in discussion. I'm
Okay.
doing just fine.
Or similar. Okay. All right. Eric?
Thank you. Along those lines, I think of what Dr. Stat was referring to. I felt like, and I appreciate the opportunity to have a chance to look at this earlier, but I felt like some reference to the Commonwealth Education Continuum as the tool to be used here, since it's already in place. It includes everybody from K through 12 on up. And it's not, it makes it clear that we are not saying that this isn't already a priority, which I know wasn't the intent, guys, I completely, isn't already a priority of President Thompson and the team, but just to reference that they utilize that mechanism to make this happen. And that was the first thought I had on it. I had another one different.
Would that be best at the last, insert that into the last paragraph in the.
Yeah, you could say something down there where it says work close with the campus, K through 12 partners, the Kentucky Continuum. I was trying to leave it as open as possible, so that because I didn't want to tie Dr. Thompson's hands or CPC. I wanted to leave it as broad, but I think listing that out would be, because you're not limiting. You're saying this and this, and maybe we put a thing and others as deemed necessary or something like that. I just didn't want to. I wanted to leave it as broad as possible for as many options.
I actually like including it, if you don't mind, because we are taking the lead. We're one of the leads on this, and this is coming, and this really gets to some strong policy efforts that's systematic. And I think the statement that council is making, that you all have recognized that this is an important issue that we have to have urgency to. I don't think y'all are saying that I don't have urgency. I hope that's not what you're saying. But the point being is that the continuum is truly something extremely unique and urgent that we can work within. So
yeah, I would say after K through 12 partners, put in Commonwealth Education Continuum, and then say and other stakeholders. Eric, does that address that?
I think it does. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, you said you had one other comment.
Well, I think this is fantastic, and I applaud you guys for having the group consider it. I just think it's more than the council and that needs to hear this, and and I think we need to be knocking on the door of the state legislature. I think we need to make sure, all the way down to the classroom and parents and so forth are aware of it. We want them to keep their eyes open and be moving ahead on this. But I particularly, while the legislature's in session, while they're considering this budget, my thinking was, I think it's important that they know that while money isn't everything, it's going to help us accomplish these things.
Well, I think is that we do request that President Thompson provide a report at our next meeting. And, I think part of his efforts in the near term are going to have to include engaging, all the statewide stakeholders. And if we make sure to include a discussion of his engagement with the legislature and all branches of government at that point in time, I think would that help? Would that help with the language associated with this and the process we've got? Eric.
I just, I'm a little bit new here, but I feel like we're in the unique position, speaking on behalf of all of post-secondary education, and now this continuum, as part of that continuum, that we really hope everyone supports us fiscally, as well as at the local level. So I would not hesitate to put a reference to the legislature in there. I know that may not be what everyone would agree with, and I absolutely understand that, but that's just my suggestion, that there be a reference to that, to this current budget consideration.
Richard, you get your hand up.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I talked to Dr. Thompson recently just about the need to, and I know this has been on his heart too, but the need to reach out to the K through 12 population and entities to encourage them to look at higher ed. I guess the question I have, and I think I know the answer, but this is putting more on Dr. Thompson's plate, and we're asking for another report, and I just would like to hear from him as to, I think I know the answer, but I thought maybe you can weigh in, Dr. Thompson, on this, because this is more adding to your job description here.
I think two things. I think one is it is important for the board to recognize the urgency of this, and how you state that, I'll leave it up to you all to state that. I think the other piece is, as we think about our next strategic agenda and how we lay this out from a board's vantage point, as well as from a staff's vantage point, is crucial in this conversation. I know we're going to have to reach out to the legislature as well as the governor's office. As a matter of fact, we have two of our senior members of the legislature on the Senate side and House side in the continuum. I think the importance of higher ed making the statement, what I wouldn't want to do is have my hands tied in this resolution, right? Because that then doesn't give me the flexibility to maneuver as fast as I want. But I do like the idea if the board makes the statement about they see it as an urgent matter. All the ways to do it, I guess y'all are leaving it up to me, and I would ask for that flexibility. As you all know, I'm going to do all those things anyway, probably even greater than you can put down in writing. But I do believe it is important that the board understands the urgency of this matter, and that we're not going to get where we need to in our economy unless we all work together to do that. And that includes the legislature, governor's office, parents and families. And you heard even today, I'll give Colby, we have to say students. So how you want to put all that in here, I don't know. But I would just want the board to recognize that it's going to take all those kind of interactions, and truly things that higher ed hadn't done before, to be honest with you, or hadn't done at the level that they've needed to do. So I take this on my back, Eric, as a goal anyway. That's why the continuum is in place. That's why we've changed. I know you didn't ask for all this, but that's why I took totally my budget and turned it on its head and built out a P12 agenda with a significant amount of dollars, as well as the workforce agenda that we're building out now. So clearly I'm going to be focused on this way beyond what we can put in a resolution. So this resolution to me should be about the board making a statement that they recognize that this is a priority that they're concerned about.
Question, to whom does this resolution get distributed? Where does it go?
My assumption is if we put the continuum in there, and I hope you do, we will give this, read it to the continuum where we have a lot of those, we have parents represented here, and we have other folks. And as we move down to the groups that Amanda and Jennifer are putting together, then I think we do that too. So the way I see this is the board of higher education is making a statement that this is the priority that I should be spending my time on. So that's the way I see it done. Now, Luke may have his resolution. He may have a different thought about it, but that's where we're going to get the most traction, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean that was the original intent, as well as to Richard and Eric's point. You know, I think this needs to be circulated. This notion that acknowledging that there's a decline, but that we're working to reverse it. We're taking swift action, bold action to reverse it. Especially now with the COVID pandemic, I think people are seeing, yes, that is going to impact. So there's an opportunity now that's unique in history that we may be able to take steps that we normally wouldn't be able to take that we think are in the right instance. So I say that in that, you know, I think the more people that hear this message, the more people that get this and that see that we are leading on this effort, the better, including the public, you know, superintendents and local governments and all of that. I think the more the better.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Sorry to take up time, but I'm getting all kinds of emails from people around the state who's watching this. I didn't know we were so popular.
I would have worn a better shirt.
They've asked me to ask you all to consider putting in there the successes we've had before you get to although the enrollment is declining. I don't know where this is at, but I've gotten 2 or 3 people responding to that. So apparently we're getting some attention on this, and I need to read the statement to see.
I mean, I could see putting in there something, you know, one of the things, our graduation percentages are going up, right? We have a lot of positive trends, as I said, kind of in my first point. And what I see is this decline in enrollment, to Dr. Stett's point, the decline in high school graduation as something that might drag on our success, right? We're making success. I see this as potentially counteracting that success. And before that happens, I want to take action to stem that to continue our successes, right? I would hate to not do something and then 3 years from now, whoops, all those graduation percentages are down and underrepresented minorities are hit harder.
Yeah, I think what they're suggesting is before we get to the whereas of the things we need to do, that we make notice of the things we've done. I think that's the clarification I just got. So whether y'all want to consider that or not, I'm just sharing with you what's in public.
I would just, so.
Go ahead, Kim.
I was just going to say, I think in the spirit of we should absolutely celebrate our success, and I don't want to lose sight of that. And I wonder if we don't do some kind of press release to talk about all the great things that we've done. But this resolution to me felt like it was, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like it's saying, hey, we identify that there's a significant challenge and a problem, and we're going to deploy whatever efforts needed in order to support fixing this problem. And it feels odd to celebrate your success when you're trying to take a stance and kind of put your flag in the ground and say, this is what we're standing for.
I agree with you. But can I make a suggestion that Aaron is collecting some information? We still have some thoughts. Can Heather put this out to the whole group and ask for responses? And we will consider it at the next executive committee meeting, which is a week from yesterday.
Are you asking me, or who's that question for? I mean, if the council needs more time to review it and do it in the executive, if it's just a week from now, I think, yeah, I just didn't want to sit on it for, until our next general meeting.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And the executive committee can do possibly a little wordsmithing or incorporation, whatever. But I think speed is important, but I think we need a little time to think a little more about it, or let other people weigh in.
I want to ask a point of process. I get Ben or Aaron or Travis. Can the council empower the executive committee to, if we say, hey, in generally like this, and can we say yes if the executive committee approves it, that it can go forward, or we don't have to wait to get back together as a group, do we?
Yeah, we can, like what we did in the for finance committee and other committees, that we could, Lucas, you could make make a motion to send this to the executive committee and have any executive committee changes would be adopted by the full council. Essentially delegate the authority to the executive committee to finalize the word space. Is that Dr. Stat? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
That's
Could I just mention one thing that I think is worth including? Not that just to clarify the point of what I think the resolution means is, I just want some language to be put in there, maybe just even a few words that mentions that even though we have had that decline, the purpose of these studies and these proposals and these initiatives is not to get back to that status quo position we've already had. Because I think we've all recognized, especially with our underrepresented minority population, even 4 years ago when we had greater numbers than now, I still don't think it was good enough, if that makes sense. So I'd like just maybe a few words be thrown in there that just emphasizes that we're not trying to get back to the status quo position, but betterment as well.
So Lucas, maybe if you could make a motion to delegate this to the executive committee, and then we can.
Yeah, so I make a motion to delegate the language of this resolution to the executive committee, so that they can receive feedback from the council in general and come up with a mutually beneficial and agreed upon verbiage.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on that?
I apologize. Who was the motion in the second? I was typing.
Richard Nelson seconded.
Lucas made the motion. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion at this point in time? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thanks for everybody for this input. And
Thank you all.
Lucas, thanks for your efforts on this. And we look forward to having getting this taken care of finalized at our executive committee meeting. You're right, Dr. Stat, I believe it's next Thursday morning. So we'll get that done. One other item of business is I want to turn over to Greg Rush, where there's Greg down there for a legislative update. Greg?
Okay, I know we're getting toward the end here, so I'll try to be brief. It's been an interesting session. The odd year sessions normally are, but this one probably more than most. The legislature was more active in the first week than usual. They actually extended the first part of the session, which typically runs 1 week in an odd year, and they added 4 legislative days to it. Actually had a Saturday session as part of that as well. Passed a number of bills, most of them related to the governor's executive or powers through executive order. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the discussion that's gone on around that. Those bills did things like they limited the governor's power to change laws through executive order, required that the executive orders have a time limit where they can't be extended without the General Assembly's approval. They passed bills that allowed businesses and schools to reopen as long as they complied with CDC guidelines. And they passed bills affecting the governor's authority to reorganize state agencies and to push through or implement emergency regulations. Also passed a bill that changed the venue for constitutional challenges, which historically had been Franklin Circuit Court for most of those, and changed that to the location of where the plaintiff is. Of those bills, the governor vetoed most of them, and we will see what the legislature does when they come back in next week. The expectation is they will override most of those vetoes, if not all of them, but we'll see. The other thing they did that was quite interesting is they took up the budget very quickly, faster than we normally see during a session. Both chambers passed versions of the budget that were continuation budgets. Essentially, they took the amounts in for last year, added a few required changes like debt service and some things like that, and then each of them passed a version of the budget. Very different from what the governor proposed. Leadership of both chambers and the A&R chairs reinforced a number of times that these were process bills and that the final budget the General Assembly enacts will not bear much resemblance to these bills, and that they essentially were passing them to go to a conference committee. And our understanding is they've had discussions during the break, and there's not been much news that I have seen about how those discussions have gone. So it's possible we'll come back next week and they will have a conference committee report and be ready to vote on it. Or it may be the week after, but all indications are that they will deal with the fiscal year 22 budget relatively quickly when they return. By using those 4 days early, they have fewer days when they do come back. So the remainder of the session through February and early March, the General Assembly will only be in session mostly Tuesdays through Fridays. They will go through the first week of March on that schedule. Then they'll take about a week where they won't be in session, but the conference committees on various bills will meet. Then they'll return mid-March to do the final passage of any bills that the conference committees have reached agreement on. Then we have 10 days for the governor to veto anything passed at that point, and then they return for overrides and will adjourn by the end of March. At this point, there have been some bills filed dealing with higher ed. Most of them are bills we saw last session as well, with a couple of exceptions. And I'll talk a little more about the exceptions probably. As Dr. Thompson mentioned, the performance funding bill, we expect that to be filed when they return next week. I think because of all the work that he and the president spent reaching consensus on that, I don't anticipate there'll be much problem with that bill moving through either chamber. Senator Givens is kind of the advocate for that bill on the Senate side, and Representative Tipton on the House. A couple of other things. You may remember we had discussions last session about House Bill 171, which changed how pension liabilities were allocated among employers. House Bill 8 is a version of that bill that has been introduced this session. The governor has endorsed this approach essentially in his budget, because as part of that reallocation of liabilities, last session, the House provided funding to the universities to essentially maintain them at what they were paying now to KERS. And I think it's an attempt to get past this issue of freezing the contribution every year, which can't be sustained. And the governor provided funding in his budget to address about 90% of that cost for the institution. So they would pay more next year, but not as much as they would move to without that additional funding. Because to give you an idea, they would go from 49% of payroll this year to about 90% of payroll next year. We don't know the fate of that bill in the Senate or this approach, and we'll kind of see as we go along. Most of the rest of the bills are things that we've seen before in one form or another. Bills related to student discipline procedures on campuses, Representative Huff has filed the bill making the FAFSA graduation requirement again. We have bills out there related to sanctuary policies, and a number of bills probably new this time related to immunization. We've got several bills out prohibiting universities and state agencies from requiring anyone to be vaccinated, I think with the exception is if they work directly in healthcare. We also have a couple bills out there that allow universities to require immunization if they have exemptions in place. So there's a little bit of kind of tug of war on that one, and we'll see where we go as we move through the session. That's pretty much, I think, what we've seen so far, and I'll see if anybody's got any questions.
Greg, I do have one point before opening it up. There's going to be a KTRS bill filed by Representative Massey. We have been asked, just to let you know, Travis is on the line. Travis has attended most of those meetings. For me, I've attended a lot. But our comprehensive campuses, they actually approached us about a unique way of doing KTRS in a way for all the new hires. And that's what this bill is about. It doesn't affect old hires or those that have already retired, but it does actually put in an option for the new hires. Now, the interesting thing about post-secondary, KTRS, and K-12, I mean, we get so scared in post-secondary, so KTRS looks different. It just so happens they've included us in the bill with K-12, but Representative Massey, I will tell you, has worked with everybody that has an input on this. I mean, over and over again, getting a lot of input. Now, no one likes to have their pensions, or even if it's not theirs, the future of others. So there's some grumblings there. For higher ed, it's what we needed. I mean, from the standpoint of what the comprehensives have needed in that area. But I will tell you, higher ed had already been moving to an optional retirement plan for now a couple of decades. So we were already on that route. So Representative Massey has asked CPE to stand with him as he makes the announcement. This is fairly regularly done for us, that we testify or stand or whatever. But I had a couple of board members that have asked me to inform you all when we've been asked to do that, to see if you had any concerns or positives or anything else you want to say. So I will tell you, we've been asked to stand next week with Representative Massey as he puts forth this bill that would be giving higher ed what they've asked for. So I wanted to fill you in on that too.
Has any staff been asked to testify in upcoming committee meetings of any sort?
No, not to this point. One of the interesting things in this session is the budget subcommittees essentially have not met. And I think that's because of the process that both the House and Senate put in place this time. President Thompson testified a number of times in the fall before the budget subcommittees, and but almost no one has testified during the session so far. We'll see if they open that up in the next couple of weeks, but we've not been notified of anything to this point.
All right. Anything further for Greg? All right. I did want to take a second here as we're kind of wrapping up to thank Heather for her work the last few days. At least once during this week, she sends me an email at night, and I replied back with a go to bed response. And she didn't, because I got another message when I woke up. So
I dedicated.
You are. So maybe a little bit crazy, but go to bed every now and then, but you've done
Ben,
Great.
I've
Yes.
got people here. I've got to leave. So
Okay.
great
Thank you, Dr.
meeting,
Seth.
and
Appreciate it.
but I gotta go.
So Heather, thank you for your efforts on this meeting and every other one as well. And I don't know if we're lower maintenance when we're in virtual or lower maintenance when we're in person. So I'm not sure which one you would prefer. But
I don't think it's any different. It just means that I get to sleep a little bit later and wear jeans while sitting at the desk.
Okay. All right. We'll take that into consideration. All right. Is there anything else that that the council would like to discuss today before us? If not, we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And until our next council meeting on April 15th and 16th. So we have a motion by Ms. Hallbauer.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor, click the leave button on your Zoom.
See you guys.
Bye.
Stay warm.
Bye.